Number 4 Ohio State versus number 3 Penn State is college football's game of the week. And today, I am going to be taking a look at the Penn State sidelines and giving you 7 reasons why Penn State football can beat Ohio State football for the first time since 2016. I've already made a preview and prediction video on this matchup, along with a video where I take the Ohio State sidelines and give 7 reasons why they can beat Penn State football in Happy Valley. So check out those videos if you haven't already, especially my preview and prediction video. But spoiler alert, I picked Penn State to win this game 34-20, and as always, in these big-time matchups, especially, or games that I think are underrated and competitive, I do make multiple videos talking about them and looking at all the angles. The angle from Team A, the angle from Team B, in this case, the angle from Ohio State and Penn State. So this is another edition talking about this matchup here. And again, I'm going to give you 7 reasons why I think the Penn State Nittany Lions can beat the Ohio State Buckeyes. But before we get into that, please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Hit the notification bell. Comment your thoughts down below. Comment some reasons why you think Penn State can beat Ohio State this coming weekend. Share the video around in this channel around to other college football fans who will enjoy our content here. And join our Discord server via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment at the top of the comment section. If you want to support the channel monetarily, thank you very much. You can super comment down below, or you can visit my Patreon page and sign up as a paid member or purchase merchandise on my merchandise store. The links to those are in the description or in the pinned comment at the top of the comment section. But the things that help you out the most and help us out the most, you can do for free. That's like the video to help us get into the algorithm. Subscribe to the channel so that our base can grow, our community can grow. Hit the notification bell so that you can get notified when we release new content. Comment so we can have engagement and conversation. Watch the video all the way through. Share the channel around. And also join our Discord server. All those things are free. And we will be doing a giveaway, by the way, at the end of the regular season to celebrate hitting 20,000 subscribers. But let's get to it. And we're going to start with the least important reason, move on to the most important, because on this channel, we save the best for last here. Reason number 7 why Penn State can win this game is the whiteout. It will be a whiteout environment at noon. I know it's not officially a whiteout, but believe me, I'm a Michigan fan, for example, and I want to take a few minutes to talk to Penn State fans, especially, and talk to them in a special way, almost from one brother to another. Both of us relate in the sense that Ohio State in the 21st century has beaten Michigan and Penn State handily, on average, many times, most of the time, in fact, in the 21st century. Michigan has always played Ohio State at noon, and the Big House is not known for trapping noise. And in 2021, it was a loud environment that caused Ohio State and their offensive line a variety of problems. It was Aiden Hutchinson, David Ojabo, and the defense, but the crowd did something in that stadium. Last season, Michigan Stadium, especially on that final drive when Michigan led 30-24 and McCord ended up throwing that interception in Michigan territory, that was the loudest I had heard Michigan through the TV screen in my entire life. Now, I wasn't at the game, but I had some friends who were, and they said it was loud. It was close to the loudest, if not the loudest, they had ever heard the crowd yell in Michigan Stadium. Penn State, Beaver Stadium, their environment is much superior in my mind, the home field advantages. That stadium's designed to trap noise, and I don't care that it's not at night or 3:30. It stinks, and this should be the whiteout game. In the same way that Michigan-Ohio State is traditionally a noon game, top-ranked Penn State versus Ohio State games, whether it's 2017, whether it is 2016 when it was the whiteout, 2018, they should be at the afternoon or at night. So it sucks, and I don't like that Big Noon Kickoff in Fox, I think, is ruining that type of tradition. However, if Penn State's going to win this game, the window in which the game is played won't matter all that much, shouldn't matter that much, because Penn State is top 5 for the first time since 2019, and the fan base is desperate for a big win. The fan base is going to want this win. And there are a variety of reasons that I have detailed, that Landon Tengwall has detailed on his, I believe it's titled Behind the Wall podcast, and that others have detailed. There are several reasons why Penn State can win for the first time in ages in this game. It's going to be loud. It is going to feel like the whiteout game. The crowd will be louder than it was in 2022, and I think this is a big game for Penn State. I think regardless of what time the game is at, this environment is going to be unlike anything that most college football teams have faced. And Autzen Stadium caused Ohio State some issues. Imagine now Ohio State being down some of their offensive linemen, and almost 50,000 more people are in the stands in a road game for Ohio State. Autzen Stadium was loud. It was one of the best environments in college football when Ohio State played there. I'm not ruling out the possibility that Penn State's environment can be more intimidating. It's definitely possible. So that's reason number 7. Spent some more time on that than I typically would for reason number 7, but it's important. I don't think a lot of people realize that it's not necessarily a sigh of relief moment for Ohio State fans or the Ohio State football team that this game is at noon. Due to the circumstances and the intensity of this matchup, the rankings, the fact that this Penn State team is really good, that the fan base has some faith in this, and Penn State's undefeated. They have nothing to lose. I think you're going to see a different type of environment. That's just my opinion. Reason number 6 here are Penn State's underrated wide receivers. Harrison Wallace III, Liam Clifford, Amari Evans, and Julian Fleming on the year have 57 receptions for 980 yards and 5 touchdowns. And per Pro Football Focus, Harrison Wallace III is actually better than Ohio State's Carnell Tate. I don't know how much I believe that. I'm a little bit inclined to agree with that, not necessarily on a purely talent basis, but Harrison Wallace III has shown up in a variety of Penn State games. He showed up against Wisconsin. He showed up against West Virginia. He showed up in other matchups. Ohio State's wide receiver core and their passing attack has basically been Emeka Egbuka and Jeremiah Smith, with a little bit of Carnell Tate, a little bit of the running backs, a tad bit of G. Scott Jr., but honestly, he's probably the worst pass catcher out of all those that I just named. Penn State's wide receiver core, I don't know if they have a Parker Washington, but if they do, Harrison Wallace III is the closest. It's the same with Jahan Dotson. Their wide receivers recently have not been up to the Penn State standard. They haven't. But this season, partially due, I think, to Andy Kotelnicki's genius offensive scheme and schematics and adaptability, the fact that Aller's a much better passer, and I think better development at receiver, better depth. They're underrated. And I think that they have a good chance to get open, whether by athleticism and individual play, or certainly by schematics against this Ohio State secondary that has struggled against Michigan State, struggled against Oregon, was exposed by Oregon, and struggled against Nebraska a little bit. Pay attention especially to Harrison Wallace III. It wouldn't shock me if he had a huge breakout game here. And in the same way that Will Howard said he had a bit of a vendetta against Penn State in this game, which I think is just mostly chirping, pay attention to that. It's the same thing with Julian Fleming. I imagine that he would like to have a big game against his former team, Ohio State, where he transferred from. Number 5 is Penn State's secondary. This is a secondary that I thought was going to be a major weakness for Penn State's defense and perhaps a problem. And although Penn State has not faced a passing offense the caliber of Ohio State's all season long, it's been impressive. They only allow 174.6 opponent passing yards per game, 5.7 opponent yards per attempt, 10 opponent yards per completion. Opponents only complete 57.28% of their passes on Penn State. And the Nittany Lions only allow a 109.1 passer rating. This secondary, with A.J. Harris in particular, transfer from Georgia, who's stepped up, is well coached. They're well developed. They have better depth than I expected. I expected the secondary to be good because Terry Smith does a phenomenal job recruiting, developing, and coaching. But this secondary, remember, is without KJ Winston, and he's probably not coming back. And they are still performing at a high level. Ohio State, they returned Denzel Burke, Davison Igbinosun, Jordan Hancock, Lathan Ransom, Jermaine Matthews Jr., and some other players, and they brought in Caleb Downs. And yes, Ohio State has played Oregon. They've played a passing offense that is at a high level. But I'm still shocked given what Ohio State returned and what Penn State brought back and also what they lost. They lost a lot of secondary players. Penn State leads the Buckeyes in opponent yards per pass attempt. Ohio State allows opponents to pass for 6.2 yards per attempt. Penn State, again, only 5.7. And Ohio State only allows opponents to complete their passes for 0.4 fewer yards. 9.6 yards per completion for their opponents compared to 10 yards per Penn State's opponent completions. This secondary has overperformed compared to a lot of other secondaries nationally. Michigan's has underperformed. Iowa's has underperformed. Ohio State's has underperformed. I think Wisconsin's has underperformed a little bit. Now, a lot of those could be the fact that the Big Ten just did not face very many good passing offenses last year. Michigan's secondary was really the only one that faced an elite passing offense last year. Washington's, and then depending on how Kyle McCord played every drive, sometimes Ohio State's, sometimes not. That could be a reason why, but I think development and depth also play a little bit into that role. As for Penn State, their secondary is playing just as well, if not better, than last year's secondary right now. And that's a compliment to Tom Allen, that's a compliment to Terry Smith, that entire defensive coaching staff, and I've been impressed. There's a chance that they could cause some confusion for Will Howard, maybe make an interception. I think they'll do a pretty good job against Ohio State's wide receivers and tight ends and whoever they match up against. Not saying they have a favorable matchup there. I think OSU's receivers are better than Penn State's defensive backs, but this is the best secondary, I think, that Ohio State has played all season long. And I'm saying it's even better than Iowa's because Iowa doesn't have the same depth, in my opinion. They haven't been as consistent. And as for Oregon, I think Oregon has some questions at secondary, though it is a very good unit. Penn State's is just, it's been very impressive to say the least. Reason number 4 are the Nittany Lion running backs, Nicholas Singleton and Katron Allen. Singleton and Allen on the season have 176 carries for 992 rushing yards. They have 202 receiving yards and 12 receiving touchdowns. What I love about these two is they're involved in the passing game, too. Not just the ground game, where Katron Allen is the reliable power back, main workload back. Like, you could run him over 30 times per game, and he would be fine. Nick Singleton is more of the explosive back, the speed and space back. They complement each other very well. From a Michigan fan perspective, yet again, they remind me of Blake Corum and Hassan Haskins back in 2021. And I think they're a little bit, in fact, a lot like Quinshon Judkins and Travion Henderson. Singleton kind of takes on that Travion Henderson role. Judkins has the Katron Allen role and vice versa. But Singleton and Allen are involved in the passing offense, and it really helps the team have another option to pick up a first down, or in the case of Singleton, get a touchdown. He has 4 receiving touchdowns on the season, which is pretty impressive for a running back. And they get to display their athleticism in a variety of ways. And they have a good offensive line ahead of them, which is another reason why Penn State can win this game, and we'll talk about that here in a few minutes. Singleton, at 100% earlier in the year, looked like one of the best, if not potentially the best running back in college football. He hasn't had that type of success ever since he got sick against UCLA. I'm looking for maybe a big game from him in this matchup because Ohio State against Oregon and against Nebraska, at times against Michigan State, did allow opposing offensive lines to open up holes against them. And Penn State's offensive line has been very effective at run blocking, very effective, especially when they are healthy, but they have depth on the offensive line as well. And as for Katron Allen, he always falls forward. He's been a reliable receiver as well from the backfield, and at times downfield too. I look for these guys to be involved in the rushing attack, in the passing attack, in everything, because you know that even though Penn State has brought out a lot of trick plays and they've done just a whole variety of things against different opponents, namely USC, and we even saw it a bit against Wisconsin, Kotelnicki is going to have some new things to throw at Ohio State. That's just who he is. He's the nation's best play caller on the offensive side of the ball, best schemer on the offensive side of the football. There's a reason I thought his hiring back in December was so impactful. So impactful. And I think you're going to see it in this game, and I think you're going to see it mainly through Singleton and Katron Allen, who will be do-it-all type players. It's the same thing with Tyler Warren, who I think is the third biggest reason why the Nittany Lions can win this game, why they can beat Ohio State. 2 of 2 for 26 yards passing, 1 passing touchdown. 7 carries for 40 yards on the ground, 1 rushing touchdown. 47 receptions, 559 receiving yards, 4 receiving touchdowns. In this game, I'd expect to see him at quarterback for a play, maybe 2, whether it's a run or whether it's a pass. I would expect to see him being used, obviously, as a blocker, but heavily as a receiver, especially if the receivers fail to get open, which is a very real possibility here. I don't know who's going to cover him for Ohio State individually. They'll probably have to double team him, or they'll have to try and rely on their pressure to get to whether it's Pribula or Aller before they can get the ball out. One of them can get the ball out to Tyler Warren or their receivers. Tyler Warren is just one of the many weapons that Penn State has on the offensive side of the football. I mean, you have their receivers who are underrated, but namely Harrison Wallace, who I think could be an X-Factor wide receiver, or at least an X-Factor wide receiver as it relates to the Big Ten or in this individual matchup. Warren is an X-Factor player. Singleton is. I'd say Katron Allen is. There's a stat out there where Penn State's 10-0 when he rushes for 100 yards or more. And remember 2 years ago in 2022 when, Singleton was the highlight running back that everyone loved as a true freshman, and they should have, but Allen was also a true freshman, and he was the one against Ohio State who scored that touchdown in the fourth quarter. He was the only running back in that game who was having success. Allen is the consistent back, and consistency and power football in the Big Ten, that's an X-Factor player. And I think that Drew Aller, when healthy, is an X-Factor player. And I think there are several offensive linemen, I don't know if it's 1 or 2, maybe more, who can be X-Factor players for Penn State in this game. This offense is awesome, and it's one of the better offenses in the country. Statistically, they have some problems scoring red zone touchdowns, but they score 33.3 points per game. They score 0.501 points per play, and they're really good at getting into the red zone. They have 463.7 yards per game. They have 4.3 red zone scoring attempts per game, 4 red zone scores per game, which is top 10, 10th exactly. A huge part of it's Tyler Warren, who helps this team move up and down the field in a variety of positions. He's going to be hard to cover. It's going to be hard to guess what exactly he's doing because he can be involved in anything from a trick play to the most basic play. Good luck covering him if you're an Ohio State defensive player. Reason number 2 is the quarterback play. They have dynamic quarterback play, the Nittany Lions do, and they also have quarterback depth. While I think Drew Aller is the ideal starter in this game, there is a world, in my opinion, where Bo Pribula starts and Penn State actually wins, to be frank. And that is because of something we'll talk about. I might as well spoil it because there's only one reason left, and it's Penn State's trench play. But I'll get into that in a few minutes. Both of these quarterbacks are capable, whether it is Aller with his strong arm, his accuracy, the fact that he's been a very good field general, also showcasing his 5-star upside that we didn't see a whole lot last year, to Bo Pribula's legs, keeping the defense honest, preventing them from just crashing on the running back when he's, making a read when he's handing it off, and then he can just take it away and punish the defense, or the fact that he's a good enough thrower to where you put him in the game, you don't exactly know whether he's going to run or pass. And also, Ohio State doesn't know who's going to play at quarterback. I would safely assume it's going to be Aller. I think he could have played against Wisconsin. I don't have a fact on this. I don't have facts to back this up, but I think that he was... It appears that he was medically cleared to play against Wisconsin. He just chose not to, or the staff didn't want to further injure him before their game against Ohio State. They didn't want to risk further injury, but I would assume that Aller is going to be playing in this game, and I think that he will be closer to 100% than not. But that's just my opinion. I don't have any word on that. It's just from what I saw on the sidelines and watching the game, it didn't feel like Drew Aller had to sit out of the Wisconsin game. I felt like that was a tactical and really wise decision by Aller and also the staff. It's better to lose to Wisconsin, have that one loss, but beat Ohio State because your quarterback and team is fully healthy, than further risking injury to one of your best players on offense and losing that Ohio State game. 11-1 with a win over Ohio State versus 11-1 with a loss to Ohio State. The former is a much better resume for the college football playoff. With the former, you can potentially, depending on what happens with Indiana and Oregon, you can potentially get to Indianapolis. The latter, a one-loss Penn State, I think, is unlikely if their losses to Ohio State to get to Indianapolis, because if Ohio State's going to beat Penn State, they're probably going to beat Indiana, seeing that they're at home, and Indiana will probably win all the rest of their games, and Oregon will likely go undefeated. But anyway, I'm getting a little bit too carried away. Penn State quarterbacks are 137 of 189. They complete 72.5% of their throws. They pass for 1,866 yards, 9.9 yards per attempt, 16 passing touchdowns on the year to 5 interceptions, and they average 43 rushing yards on the ground per game, the quarterbacks do, whether that is Bo Pribula or whether that is Drew Aller. And that's not sack adjusted. If you adjust for sacks, that's probably around 50. So Ohio State will have to pay attention to that quarterback run, whether it is from Pribula or from Aller improvising on his scrambles. And I think his improvised scrambles have been very impressive this year. He often picks up first downs when he is able to escape the pocket after, he progresses through his reads. There's no one open downfield, so I'm just going to pick up a few yards for my team instead of taking a sack or throwing it away if I can. Aller is top 10 in QBR. Bo Pribula played a very good game against Wisconsin, and he's involved enough with the offense to where I think he could, although it's not preferred, he could start this game and win it for Penn State. With Aller starting, you have the strong arm, you have the accuracy, you have the experience. He's played against Ohio State before last season, and he was with the team in 2022. He didn't play in that game, but he was still with the team, understands the environment. The pressure probably won't affect him as much, etc. Reason number one is something I'm going to talk about very briefly, because I think it's something that's pretty obvious, and I may be talking about it later this week in another video relating to this matchup. Penn State has elite trench play, and it's high octane as well. I say that because the defense hasn't gotten a ton of sacks this year. This has not been a defense that has done an elite job at finishing when it comes to their pressures at the quarterback. But I think a part of that is their bend but don't break defense. The defense is more conservative under Tom Allen than it was under Manny Diaz. And you still have those explosive elements like Abdul Carter, Zane Durant, who's done a very good job, Devon J. Thomas. You have just a tremendous depth at defensive tackle, tremendous depth at D end. I mean, if Denai Dennis Sutton goes down with injury, which would absolutely suck, you still have players behind him who can step up and do a good job, like Smith Vilbert, Amin Vanover, Alonzo Ford Jr. You have a lot of depth on the D-line, and Penn State on the season is only 14 sacks, I know. They have a lot more TFLs. They have far more pressures than that. And you look at their run defense here, the Nittany Lions are one of the top rushing defenses in the entire country. I mean, look at this. Only allow 5.9 rushing first downs per game, 93.1 rushing yards per game, 3.2 opponent yards per carry. Those are all top 15. And teams don't like to run on Penn State all that much. They're top 15 in carries averaged per game from their opponents because that D-line's scary. It's intimidating. It's going to be a tough unit to overcome for Ohio State, especially with the injuries they have on the offensive line. Penn State has a 0.27 points per play margin. That means they score 0.27 more points per one of their plays compared to one of their opponents' plays. They have a 4.8 yards per point margin. That means their opponents have to gain 4.8 more yards to score the same amount of points as Penn State does. A plus 104 rushing yards per game differential, and a plus 1.9 yards per carry differential, and a plus 2.6 sack percentage differential, because their offensive line and their defensive line are both one of the best in the country. Their trench play is a non-negotiable, especially on the D-line compared to Ohio State's O-line. And Ohio State's defensive line has not done that good of a job either this season, because in order to get pressure against Big Ten teams, they have had to blitz. They have to take risks, and those risks have not always paid off. We saw this against Nebraska, where Nebraska, if the play didn't result in the TFL by Ohio State, they were able to block downfield and pick up yardage because of the amount of pressure and players being sent forward. You look at Oregon. Ohio State, when they sent 4 against Oregon, or when they sent 2 on that weird play, it didn't matter. They never got home, and Oregon was able to open up holes in the ground game. this Penn State O-line will be able to open up holes. They will. I'm very confident in that. And how Ohio State's going to have to win, as I discussed in how Ohio State can win that video, is really leaning on their skill position play and playing good enough in the trenches to where their skill position play can win them this game. But that is not exactly the best strategy to have in the Big Ten. It's the cards that Ohio State has, so they have to use them. As for Penn State, the laws of the Big Ten, trench play, especially interior trench play, favors the Nittany Lions, and I think that is the biggest reason why they can win this football game. Thank you all so much for watching this video. Remember to like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and comment your thoughts down below. Thanks to Crash2488, Brasco Rascal, and Connor Little OH for being Heisman members. Thanks to Chris Lane, Ismar, Tyler Nye for being All-American members. And thanks to John Lynn, Roaming Gnome, Matthew Sale, Austin Christmas, Joshua Jorgensen, and Will Loftus for being All-Conference members. Check out my merchandise store, Patreon page, and Discord server via the link in the description or down below in the pinned comment. Have a great day, everyone. Go Buckeyes and go Nittany Lions.